Well, I would wish to just have a small perspective of Simba Climate Council, University of Nairobi. And one thing that I would like to say is that the matters being propagated by the Simba Climate Council, University of Nairobi, is one of the most progressive agendas when it comes to climate change and climate action when as far as the government involvement in conservation and climate change mitigation is concerned. Well, I just looked at what can really give us what we call an impact in matters of climate change mitigation in Kenya. And as I was looking at the scope and the perspective and also the approach being taken by Simba Climate Council, University of Nairobi, I believe that is the direction we need to take as a country. For instance, we are asking ourselves as a country, what is the role of educational institutions, especially the higher education institutions, in terms of what it gives back to the society, apart from the large chunk of money or financial resources that are channeled to these organizations in Kenya? Ask yourself this question: what is the impact of these particular interventions? At the end of the day, for example, look at the overall budget allocations. Budget allocation in terms of budget allocations in Kenya on matters of education, that is basic level education, and also the higher education institutions. At the end of the day, I would like to put it this way, that the government of Kenya and other stakeholders globally are actually spending a lot of resources in the education institutions just to impart knowledge to the large clientele in terms of the student body and the teaching and the non-teaching staffs, who are actually all involved in imparting knowledge in this particular population of students. However, despite these particular interventions in terms of the huge amount of resources that are channeled into this education sector, you ask yourself every day, every year, we have thousands of students graduating from higher education institutions in Kenya. But at the end of the day, what is the impact, the overall impact of this particular population in terms of what the country gains in the long run? For instance, you find that we have the Higher Education Loans Board, which is the body charged with actually providing the financial resources to the students' body across the country, and this is common sense. Or at the end of the day, this particular financial resource is mostly taken like a grant, which is quite different from the very foundational sense when it was actually crafted. But at the end of the day, ask yourself whether grant or a loan, because definitely it's a loan that is actually legally binding for the people who actually take it in their studies to facilitate their studies in higher education. But ask yourself at the end of the day, despite the huge resources that we pump in the higher education institutions, what is the end product and what is the gain? In terms of the individual gains, and also as a country, what does the country gain from these individuals that are trained with a lot of resources, with a lot of time as a resource as well? What is the end game? And that is the basis that I found the Simba Climate Council, University of Nairobi, has actually tried to devise a mechanism whereby this task force can be tapped from the higher education institutions to inform and to provide the actual expertise and solutions to curb the challenges and the problems that we encounter in the society. And one of the focus that this organization is taking, and that can actually be replicated and produce a multiplier effect, is matters of climate change mitigation in the country and the world at large. For example, higher education institutions like the University of Nairobi is actually renowned for research and development. And therefore, there is a huge manpower that can conduct very substantive research that can actually be used in informing policies in this country, that can actually take this country to another level. Unfortunately, this manpower is often overlooked, maybe on the basis of how tender it could be, or maybe at what level it can be useful to the government. Unfortunately, the government and the policymakers, they could have learned some information to do with how important this particular manpower can be tapped. For instance, in my view, I would think that the university has, how the Simba Climate Council University of Nairobi has been actually framed or structured. I noted that there is a student task force, and also there is what we call the advisory board, tier number 2. And when I look at that, it is one of the safeguards that have been put in place to inform the findings that are actually undertaken at the level of the student leadership. And then it is taken to the next level to ensure that it is filtered and to have the end product as only what is consumable or what can actually benefit the policymakers in coming up with solutions to what affects this country at a macro level. And maybe the globe at large, because it is dealing with the matters of climate change. So if we can come up with such policies where we can come up with that model whereby the higher education institutions have a way of linking up with the government institutions or departments, such that some of the functions that are actually escalated at the ministry level, at the parastatus level, are actually powered by the research-based findings that are undertaken at the higher education institutions premises. So, in a nutshell, I'm just of the view that we need to come up with a model that we can bridge the gap between the higher education institutions, which are actually spending a huge chunk of resources for this country, and then to see how we can actually take the raw product that are actually identified from the institutions to benefit the government directly by getting the real-time information or the findings that can be of great benefit to the policymakers and maybe other tiers of government operations. So my name is Makaris Jogunas, as I introduced myself, and I would like to be engaging once in a while in what I term as some of the routes that we can take towards bridging the gap between what is actually produced from our institutions to what is actually required at the ministerial or what we call policymakers level. So engage with me once in a while. In case you have anything that you would like to share with me, or maybe ask questions to do with my expertise and my team of experts whom we engage with from the University of Nairobi, please feel free to link up with me through the following number: 0723 354 483. 0723 354 483. You can also reach me via WhatsApp, the same number. You can also reach me through an alternative line, that is 0784 452 243. 0784 452 243. Thank you very much and enjoy your evening. Thank you.